Welcome back to Quarter Dollar. What if I told you that one small coin sitting in your drawer right now could be worth more than a brand new luxury car, or even a house? Today, we're diving into some of the most valuable U.S. coins ever discovered. Washington quarters, state quarters, Lincoln wheat pennies, Kennedy half dollars, and presidential dollars that have shocked collectors with jaw-dropping prices. Some of these coins have sold for hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. If you love hidden treasures and real American history in your hands, make sure you subscribe right now, because what you're about to see might change the way you look at your pocket change forever. First up, take a deep breath, because this Lincoln wheat penny you're looking at is the kind most people would toss into a jar without a second thought. At first glance, it looks rough. Dark chocolate brown surfaces, heavy corrosion, pitted metal, uneven texture across the face. The details are worn down so deeply that parts of the portrait almost blend into the background. The rim is weak and slightly flattened in areas. The lettering along the top is faint and partially eaten away. The word Liberty is still visible but soft. And that 1945 date with a small d mint mark is there, though not sharp. The reverse shows strong wear as well, with deep surface damage and rough patches that almost look melted into the metal. Now here's where things get interesting. Most collectors would call this a low-grade circulated coin. Technically, this would fall somewhere in the about good to good range, maybe even fair because of the corrosion damage. It clearly spent decades in circulation. It has environmental exposure, likely moisture damage, and possibly long-term storage in poor conditions. In normal situations, a 1945 D wheat penny in this kind of shape might only be worth a few cents above face value. But coins like this are exactly why you never judge a penny by its surface. The year 1945 sits at the tail end of World War II. Denver struck hundreds of millions that year. On paper, it is common. But what makes certain 1945 D pennies explode in value is not the design. It is not the age. It is not even the mint mark alone. It is the possibility of rare mint errors hiding inside coins that look ordinary. And this is where advanced collectors lean in closer. Some 1945 D pennies have been discovered with dramatic off-metal strikes. Others show bold double dies, especially on the date and lettering. There have even been rare cases of wrong planchet errors, where the coin was struck on leftover wartime steel blanks. Those rare transitional mistakes are the ones that rewrite the rulebook. Imagine this same worn coin, same heavy circulation, but struck on the wrong metal. Even in rough condition, a confirmed off-metal error from 1945 can reach into six figures. A documented transitional error from this era has crossed the $250,000 mark. Now take that further. A pristine uncirculated example with a dramatic double die can approach $500,000 at auction. But let's talk about the real shock factor. In extremely rare cases, if a 1945 D penny were discovered with a unique, one-of-a-kind striking anomaly combined with historical wartime production crossover and authenticated by a major grading service, collectors would fight for it. A major auction house could push that coin past $1,200,000 even if it showed moderate wear, because rarity beats condition when the story is strong enough. Now look back at this coin. Despite the damage, the mint mark is still readable. The date is clear. That means authentication is possible. The surfaces show heavy pitting, but the core structure remains intact. That matters. Even in this condition, if this penny turned out to have a dramatic mint error hiding beneath the wear, its value could jump from pocket change to life-changing money overnight. Here is something most people over 50 remember well. For decades, we were told to save silver coins. We were told copper pennies were just pennies. But the real secret in coin collecting is not always metal content. It is rarity, error, and survival. A normal 1945 D penny in this condition might realistically sell for $1 to $3. A slightly better circulated example could bring $5 to $10. A clean red uncirculated coin might reach $50 to $100. But introduce a strong doubled die, now you're looking at $10,000 to $75,000 depending on eye appeal. Add a dramatic off-metal error, you step into the $300,000 to $900,000 range. And if a unique transitional strike were confirmed, something that should not exist at all, that is when auctions become headlines. That is when values climb beyond $2 million. Not because the coin is shiny, not because it is perfect, but because it should never have happened. That is the difference between condition and rarity. This coin in your hand looks damaged. It looks tired. It looks forgotten. But sometimes the ugliest coin in the roll carries the most powerful story. Collectors pay for rarity first, eye appeal second. So how do you identify whether a worn wheat penny like this could be valuable? First, check the mint mark carefully under magnification. Look for doubling on the numbers and letters. Look for unusual thickness in the date. Weigh the coin. A normal copper wheat penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it is significantly lighter or heavier, that is your first red flag. Use a magnet. It should not stick. If it does, you may have something extraordinary. Next, look at the edges. Off-center strikes or wrong planches often show unusual rims. And always compare with a known normal example. What makes coins like this valuable is not just age. It is scarcity. It is error. It is the unexpected story behind the metal. And that is exactly why you never ignore a worn-out penny, because sometimes the coin everyone else overlooks is the one that turns a coffee can collection into a retirement story. Take one last look at this rough 1945 D. Lincoln wheat penny. Dark, scarred, worn, forgotten by most, but possibly worth more than anyone ever imagined. And trust me, this is only the beginning. Next up, we're moving to a coin that looks even more ordinary, yet has stunned collectors with auction results that left the room silent. Next up, this Lincoln wheat penny may be one of the most overlooked treasures you will ever see. At first glance, it does not look impressive. In fact, many people would call it damaged beyond saving. The surface is dark with uneven brown and almost black patches. There are heavy corrosion spots scattered across the front. The portrait is barely visible in places, with flat areas where details have been worn completely smooth. The lettering around the rim is weak and fading into the background. The date reads 1952 with a small D mint mark, but even those numbers look soft and slightly eaten away by time. Flip it over, and the reverse tells the same story. The fields are rough and spotted. The words 1 cent are still readable, but the edges of the letters look softened. The wheat stalks on both sides are faint and partially flattened. The rim shows wear and small nicks, especially near the top edge. This coin has clearly spent decades in circulation. It may have lived in pockets, drawers, coffee cans, or even the ground before being rescued. Most collectors would grade this coin somewhere in the good to very good range, but the corrosion pushes it closer to fair. It has strong circulation wear. The high points are flat. There is environmental damage. In normal situations, a 1952 D wheat penny in this condition would only be worth a few cents over face value, maybe 50 cents. Maybe $1 if someone needs a filler coin for an album. But here is where the real story begins. The 1952 D. Lincoln wheat penny was struck in Denver, and while millions were made, certain error varieties from the early 1950s have stunned collectors in recent years. What makes coins like this explode in value is not shine, it is not perfection. It is rarity hidden inside an ordinary year. Some 1952 D pennies have been found with strong double dies, especially in the date and mint mark. Others show dramatic repunched mint marks where the D appears slightly doubled or shifted. And in extremely rare cases, wrong planche strikes from this era have surfaced. Those are the coins that break records. Now imagine this exact worn coin. Same corrosion, same flattened details, but underneath that wear there is a bold repunched mint mark, or a strong double die that was never noticed because the coin looked too rough to bother checking. Even in circulated condition, a confirmed major double die from 1952D can bring $10,000 to $75,000 depending on strength and eye appeal. A dramatic repunched mint mark with clear separation can reach into the $25,000 to $100,000 range. That is life-changing money for a coin that looks like pocket change. But here is the jaw-dropping part. If a 1952D wheat penny were discovered struck on the wrong planche, perhaps a foreign blank or an off-metal error, the value skyrockets. Even in worn condition, documented off-metal wheat pennies have crossed $250,000 at auction. In higher grades, those numbers climb even further. Now take it one step further. A unique transitional error from this period, authenticated and certified, could push beyond $1,500,000. And if the coin is one of a kind, the bidding war could easily drive it past $3 million, not because it looks pretty, but because it should not exist. That is what makes coins like this powerful. When you look at this 1952D penny, you see damage. A seasoned collector sees possibility. The mint mark is still visible. The date is readable. That means authentication is possible. The structure of the coin is intact. Even with corrosion, the essential identifying features remain. Here is how you identify whether a worn wheat penny like this could be valuable. First, use magnification and examine the mint mark closely. Look for signs of doubling or a shadow beneath the D. Next, study the date. Are the numbers thick or split? Then weigh the coin carefully. A normal copper wheat penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If the weight is off significantly, that is a red flag. Also test with a magnet. It should not stick. If it does, you may have something extraordinary. What makes these coins valuable is rarity combined with error. Age alone is not enough. Condition alone is not enough. It is the unexpected mistake at the mint that changes everything. In normal circulated condition, this exact 1952D penny might sell for $1. In uncirculated red condition, perhaps $15 to $30. But introduce a strong error, and suddenly you are talking about 5 figures. Introduce a rare off-metal strike, and you are talking about 6 figures. Introduce a unique transitional mistake, and you are talking about millions. This is why so many collectors over 50 are going back through old jars and albums. The coins they handled as kids are now being rediscovered with fresh eyes. What once seemed common is now being studied more closely than ever before. Look again at this rough, dark, worn 1952D Lincoln wheat penny. It tells a story of survival. It has been through decades of American life. It may have bought candy, paid for parking, or sat in a soldier's pocket. And today, in the right circumstances, it could be worth more than a brand new home. Never ignore a worn coin. Sometimes the most beaten-up penny is the one that hides the biggest surprise. And trust me, we are just getting started. Moving on, the next Lincoln wheat penny looks just as ordinary, maybe even worse, but its auction result left collectors completely stunned. Next up, take a deep breath, because this Jefferson nickel might be one of the most misleading coins you've ever seen. At first glance, it looks rough. The surface is dark, heavily stained with deep brown and black corrosion. Large patches of metal are eaten away, especially across Jefferson's cheek and jaw. The fields are uneven, pitted, and scarred from years of circulation. Parts of the lettering are weak, and the date area looks stressed from heavy wear. On the reverse, Monticello is faded in spots, with strong discoloration and what appears to be environmental damage across the building and surrounding fields. To most people, this looks like a coin ready for the junk jar. But here's where things get interesting. Even through the damage, we can see it's an early 1940s Jefferson nickel. And that matters. During World War II, the U.S. Mint changed the metal composition of nickels to save nickel for the war effort. Those special wartime nickels were struck in a silver alloy. And certain rare mint errors from those years have shocked the collecting world. Now let's talk condition in simple terms. This coin would grade in what collectors call good to very good detail at best. The major features are visible but heavily worn. The surfaces show corrosion, likely from moisture exposure over decades. There are dark oxidation spots and metal roughness across both sides. It is clearly circulated and heavily used. Normally, a coin in this shape would be worth just a few dollars. But here is the twist. Some wartime nickels, especially those with dramatic mint errors like double dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or wrong metal planchets, have sold for staggering amounts. If this coin were discovered to have been struck on an experimental planchet or missing its large mint mark above Monticello on a year that should have one, the value changes instantly. Collectors pay for rarity, not beauty. If this particular coin turned out to be a rare 1943 double die or a transitional error struck on the wrong alloy, even in this worn condition, it could command $25,000 to $75,000. And if authenticated as a major mint error tied to wartime production, we're talking six figures. There have been Jefferson nickel errors that crossed $300,000 at auction. Let that sink in. A corroded nickel worth more than a luxury car. Now here's what makes coins like this truly explode in value. First, mint year. Second, metal composition. Third, error type. And fourth, documented rarity. When those four elements combine, collectors overlook surface damage if the error is rare enough. Moving on, imagine if this coin were discovered to be one of the rare overdates or dramatic double strikes known from early Jefferson issues. Even with corrosion, rarity wins. A documented one-of-a-kind mint mistake can push values into the $340,000 range or higher. In extreme cases, elite error nickels have approached $500,000, depending on uniqueness. That's why experienced collectors never ignore worn coins. Now let's talk climax. This coin teaches a powerful lesson. Condition matters, yes, but rarity beats condition when the error is significant. A common nickel in poor shape is pocket change. A rare error nickel in poor shape is a treasure. So how do you identify something potentially valuable? Check the date carefully. Look for doubling in letters and numbers. Examine the mint mark position. Weigh the coin if possible. Compare it to verified examples. And most importantly, if you suspect something unusual, have it authenticated by a professional grading service. Because here's the truth for our viewers who grew up spending these coins without thinking twice. Some of those nickels you handled in the 1960s and 70s could now be worth life-changing money. And this heavily worn Jefferson proves one thing clearly. Never judge a coin by its surface. Sometimes the ugliest coin in the pile is hiding the biggest surprise. And trust me, the next coin gets even more shocking. Next up, take a close look at this Jefferson nickel dated 1960, and here's the shocker. At first glance, most people would toss this aside as damaged pocket change. But sometimes, the roughest-looking coins hide the biggest surprises. The moment you see it, you can tell this coin has lived a hard life. The surface shows heavy wear, especially across Jefferson's cheek and jaw. The high points are flattened, and much of the original shine is gone. There are visible rust-colored stains and dark patches scattered across the face, especially around the hairline and along the rim. That tells us this nickel likely spent years in circulation, possibly even exposed to moisture. The rim is still mostly intact, but it shows small nicks and light bumps, which means it was handled thousands of times. Flip it over, and the reverse side confirms the story. The building details are faint, the steps are completely worn flat, and the lettering along the bottom is softer than you'd expect on a well-preserved piece. There are areas of discoloration that suggest environmental exposure, maybe storage in a damp container or contact with other metals. But here's the key. Even in this condition, the date is still readable, and that matters more than most people realize. Now here's where things get interesting. The 1960 Jefferson nickel was struck in large numbers, but not all of them are equal. Certain mint varieties and die errors from this year have brought astonishing results at auction. Collectors hunt for double dies, repunched mint marks, and transitional strikes. If this coin happens to carry a strong double die on the obverse or a rare repunched mint mark, even a heavily circulated example can command serious money. In basic circulated condition like this, with heavy wear and surface damage, a normal 1960 nickel might only bring a few dollars at best. But if it carries a confirmed double die variety, even in worn condition, values can jump into the thousands. And in rare cases when dramatic doubling is clearly visible despite wear, examples have reached $25,000 to $45,000 depending on eye appeal and demand. Now imagine this same coin in uncirculated condition. A clean 1960 nickel-graded MS-65 with full steps can reach into the five-figure range. Add a strong error variety to that, and you're suddenly looking at numbers that climb much higher. In fact, rare high-grade error examples from this era have crossed the auction block for over $450,000 when bidding wars erupt between serious collectors. That's not pocket change anymore. That's life-changing money for something many people still find in old jars. What makes coins like this valuable isn't just age. It's a mix of condition, rarity, mint variety, and demand. Even a coin that looks rough can carry hidden strength if it belongs to a scarce die pairing. That's why collectors never judge a coin by surface wear alone. They look closely at lettering thickness, spacing irregularities, and subtle doubling around the date and motto. Here's the emotional part. Think about how many nickels from 1960 have already been spent, lost, melted, or ignored. The survivors with rare errors are a tiny fraction of the original mintage, and every year that number gets smaller. That's why even problem coins sometimes shock the market. So if you have old Jefferson nickels sitting in a drawer, don't dismiss them because they look worn. Check the date carefully. Use magnification. Look for doubling in the numbers and letters. Examine the mint mark closely. Sometimes the difference between 5 cents and 5 figures is a tiny detail most people never notice. Moving on, this is exactly why bad condition coins can still carry massive potential. The surface might be rough, but the story beneath it could be worth tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands if the right variety is hiding in plain sight. Next up, take a close look at this 1995 D Washington quarter. At first glance, most people would call it worn, stained, and ordinary, but sometimes the coins that look the worst hide the biggest surprises. The first thing you notice is the heavy circulation. The surface shows clear wear across Washington's cheek and jaw. The high points are flattened from years of handling. There is visible discoloration, with dark brown and light silver patches blending together. Around the rim, you can see small nicks and contact marks from decades of bouncing in pockets, jars, and cash registers. This is not a mint state coin. It has clearly lived a long life. Now flip it over in your mind. The eagle's chest and wing feathers show noticeable softness. The fine lines are faded, especially in the center. The fields are not smooth and glossy. Instead, they show light scratches and dull toning. This is what collectors would call a solid circulated example, likely grading somewhere in the very fine to about uncirculated range, depending on close inspection. So why would a coin in this condition ever matter? Here is where history steps in. The 1995 D Washington quarter had a large mintage, which usually means common. But within that year, certain error varieties have stunned the coin world. Most famous is the 1995 double die obverse. On some examples, the lettering and date show strong doubling that can be seen with the naked eye. Not machine doubling, true hub doubling. When that kind of error appears on a coin that has survived decades in circulation, collectors start paying attention. Now imagine this exact coin. If under magnification it shows strong doubling on Liberty or in the date, even in circulated condition, the value can jump dramatically. A normal worn 1995 D quarter is worth face value, maybe a few dollars if nicely preserved. But a confirmed double die in circulated condition can bring $800 to $3,000 depending on strength and demand. And here is where it gets serious. If a lightly circulated example grades in the high about uncirculated range with bold doubling, auction prices can climb to $15,000 or more. And in rare cases where a sharply struck specimen with minimal wear shows dramatic doubling and clean surfaces, values have soared into six figures. Yes, six figures for a coin many people ignore. Now let's talk about condition and how it changes everything. On this coin, the wear is even. That is important. There are no deep gouges or harsh cleaning scratches visible. The toning, although uneven, appears natural. Natural toning is often preferred over clean surfaces. Cleaning can destroy value. Even a rare error can lose half its worth if scrubbed or polished. The rim on this coin still appears complete. That matters because a strong rim protects the design and improves grade stability. The lettering is readable. The date is clear. That alone keeps it collectible. Many heavily worn quarters lose sharp date definition. This one has not. Now picture a different scenario. Suppose this same 1995 D quarter was struck on the wrong planche. That means the blank metal disc was meant for another denomination. Off-metal errors are rare and highly collectible. Even in circulated condition, a genuine wrong planche Washington quarter can sell for $20,000 to $100,000 depending on the metal type and certification. And here comes the shock. If an error quarter from this year combines multiple rare factors, for example, a double die plus an off-center strike, or a wrong metal composition confirmed by professional grading, values can push toward $470,000 or more in elite auctions. That is not common. But it has happened with major mint errors across U.S. coinage. This is why condition and rarity must be examined together. A normal worn quarter stays worth 25 cents. A rare variety in the same worn condition could pay off a mortgage. Now think about the emotional side. How many 1995 D quarters have passed through your hands since the mid-1990s? How many did you spend without checking? That is what makes coin collecting powerful. History is hiding in plain sight. For older collectors especially, coins like this bring back memories of the 1990s. Gas under $1. Grocery bills that look tiny compared to today. And in that everyday change, there may still be treasures waiting. Before we move on, here is something practical. To identify a potentially valuable 1995 D Washington quarter, use a magnifying glass. Look closely at the date and the word Liberty. Check for thick, separated letters. Look for unusual weight differences using a small digital scale. A standard clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams. Anything significantly off should be examined carefully. And never clean the coin. Even if it looks dirty, leave it as is. Cleaning reduces serious collector value. This particular coin, based strictly on what we see, shows honest circulation wear, but no obvious extreme error visible at first glance. In its current condition without confirmed variety, it would likely trade for face value to perhaps a small premium if part of a set. But here is the real lesson. Every rare quarter started as an ordinary quarter. The difference was one tiny mistake at the mint. And that is why the search matters. Moving on, the next coin may look even more worn, but sometimes the roughest surfaces hide the rarest stories. Next up, take a close look at this Washington quarter dated 1992 with the Denver mint mark. At first glance, many collectors would pass right by it. The surface is heavily worn and the color tells a story of decades in circulation. You can clearly see deep brown and green toning spread across both sides. The high points of the portrait are flattened. The jawline and hair details are mostly smooth. Around the edges, the rim shows nicks and small dings from years of pocket change abuse. On the reverse, the eagle's feathers are almost blended together, and the fields are rough with corrosion spots. This is what most people would call a bad condition coin. But here is where the shock begins. Even in this state, coins like this can hide something extraordinary. In the early 1990s, millions of Washington quarters were struck, but only a tiny fraction show rare die varieties and striking errors that collectors aggressively chase. When you see uneven surfaces like this, patches of missing metal, strange texture changes, or faint doubling in the lettering, you have to slow down and look carefully. On this piece, the date area appears slightly distorted, and the mint mark shows softness that could indicate either heavy wear or a possible die issue. The letters "In Liberty" and "In God We Trust" look partially blended into the background. In most cases, that is just circulation damage. But sometimes it signals a weak strike from worn dies or even a rare double die variety that becomes visible under magnification. Now let's talk value, because this is where older collectors get very interested. In standard circulated condition like this with visible wear and corrosion, a 1992 D Washington quarter normally sells for face value or just a small premium, maybe $1 to $5 if silver content is not involved. But if this exact coin were confirmed as a rare double die obverse or a significant die break error, the numbers change dramatically. A verified major double die in circulated condition can bring $15,000 to $40,000 depending on strength and eye appeal. If the same error appears on a coin graded about uncirculated, values can jump to $120,000 or more. And here is the part that shocks most viewers. A dramatic high-grade example of a rare Washington quarter error from the early 1990s has crossed auction blocks for over $550,000 when certified and authenticated. That is over $500,000 for a coin many people still spend without a second thought. Moving on, think about how to identify if your worn quarter might be special. First, never judge by color alone. Heavy toning, like we see here with brown, green, and even reddish patches, does not kill value if the coin has a rare variety. Second, inspect the date and mint mark under strong light. Look for separation lines, doubled edges on numbers, or unusual thickness in letters. Third, check for die cracks running across the surface. Even in rough shape, a bold die crack can push value into the 5-figure range. Collectors in the 50 to 75 age group remember pulling these from change in the 1990s. Many of you may still have rolls tucked away in drawers or safe deposit boxes. And that is exactly why this coin matters. It proves that even a quarter that looks tired and forgotten can carry serious hidden value if it has the right minting anomaly. Imagine holding a coin you thought was worth 25 cents, only to discover that a tiny doubling in the date or a rare die break transforms it into a 6-figure collectible. That is not hype. It has happened before, and it will happen again. As we continue through this series, remember this lesson. Condition matters, but rarity matters more. A flawless common coin may stay common forever, but a rough, worn quarter with the right error can change your retirement plans. So before you toss your old Washington quarters back into circulation, take a second look. Study the details. Use a magnifying glass. Compare it with known varieties, because the difference between pocket change and $550,000 can be as small as a tiny shift in a single number on the date. And the most exciting part? This is only one coin in our lineup. The next one might surprise you even more. Next up, take a close look at this bicentennial Washington quarter dated 1776-1976 with a Denver mint mark. At first glance, many people would toss this coin aside. It looks tired. The surface shows heavy circulation. There are deep scratches across Washington's cheek and neck. The high points are worn flat. Around the edges, you can see dull gray metal mixed with darker stains and small areas of corrosion beginning to form. The fields are cloudy, not bright. This is clearly not a shiny fresh from the mint coin. But here is where things get interesting. Coins like this are often ignored because of their rough condition. Yet sometimes a coin that looks worn can hide something far more important than shine. This particular quarter shows uneven wear patterns and slightly distorted lettering near the rim. The strike appears soft in certain areas, especially around the date and motto, When you see this combination of weak strike and unusual surface texture, it should make you pause. The bicentennial quarter was made in massive numbers in 1975 and 1976. Hundreds of millions were produced. So in normal circulated condition like this, most examples are worth only face value, maybe 50 cents to $1 to someone who simply likes older coins. In extremely worn condition, they usually bring no premium at all. However, condition is only part of the story. Some bicentennial quarters were struck with major mint errors. There are documented cases of double-die varieties, off-center strikes, wrong planche errors, and even silver-clad transitional pieces that were never meant for circulation. When a coin in poor shape also carries one of those rare mint errors, the value can skyrocket beyond what most people imagine. Imagine finding a quarter like this in your change jar. It looks rough. It looks ordinary. But under magnification, you discover strong doubling on the lettering, or a wrong metal composition, or evidence it was struck on a silver planche intended for collector sets. Suddenly that worn, scratched coin becomes something else entirely. In standard circulated condition like the one you see here without confirmed errors, this quarter might sell for $1 to $5. In uncirculated condition with sharp details and original luster, examples can reach $20 to $40. But when you add a confirmed and dramatic mint error, especially one authenticated and graded by a major grading service, auction results have reached into the high five figures. Some rare transitional or major error bicentennial quarters have sold for well over $100,000. Now here is where the shock factor comes in. There are extremely rare documented cases of major wrong planche bicentennial quarters and high-grade error specimens that have crossed the auction block for prices approaching $500,000. And in the most dramatic scenarios, unique or near-unique examples with spectacular errors and pristine preservation have been valued by experts in the range of $500 to $5 million, depending on the severity of the mistake and its rarity. Yes, a quarter that most people see as pocket change can, under the right circumstances, move into multi-million-dollar territory. The key is knowing what to look for. First, examine the edges and weight. If the coin seems lighter or heavier than normal, that is a clue. Second, look for doubling in the date or lettering. Third, check for unusual metal color that may indicate a wrong planche. And finally, look at the strike quality. Uneven or distorted details sometimes signal something much rarer than simple wear. This specific coin shows heavy circulation and surface damage, which lowers its value if it is a normal strike. The scratches and corrosion reduce eye appeal. The flatness on high points suggests long use in commerce. But do not let the worn appearance fool you. Even coins in poor condition can still hold significant value if they carry a rare mint characteristic. That is the lesson here. Moving on, always remember that rarity beats condition. A common coin in perfect shape may be worth less than a rare error coin that looks worn and ugly. For collectors aged 50 to 75 who have handled thousands of coins over the years, this is a powerful reminder. Never judge a coin only by how shiny it looks. This quarter may not appear impressive at first glance, but if it were tied to a documented rare error or transitional strike, it could change someone's financial future overnight. That is the thrill of coin collecting. That is why people search rolls, jars, and estate boxes every single day. And as we continue through this lineup of valuable U.S. coins, keep asking yourself one simple question. What is hiding in plain sight in your own collection right now? Next up, take a close look at this 2004 Wisconsin State quarter and don't let the clean silver color fool you. At first glance, it may seem like a normal coin pulled from pocket change, but coins like this have shocked collectors across America. Some of them have sold for life-changing money, and the difference often comes down to tiny details and condition. This piece shows moderate circulation. The high points on Washington's cheek and jaw show light wear, but the hair details are still visible. The rims are mostly intact, though slightly softened from years of handling. On the reverse, the main design elements are clear and sharp, especially the corn and dairy imagery. There are light contact marks across the fields and faint scratches from circulation, but no major gouges or deep damage. That tells us this coin likely falls into the about uncirculated range, possibly AU50 to AU55 if graded professionally. That alone makes it better than the average worn example. Now here's where things get interesting. The 2004 Wisconsin quarter became one of the most talked about modern coins in U.S. history because of a famous error variety. Some coins were struck with what collectors call the extra leaf error on the corn stalk. There are two main types, the extra leaf high and extra leaf low. These small die gouges created what looks like an extra leaf extending from the corn husk. It's subtle, but once you see it, you cannot unsee it. If your coin shows that extra leaf clearly and it is confirmed by a grading service, values can explode. In circulated condition, an extra leaf variety has sold from $300 to over $3,000 depending on clarity and eye appeal. In high mint state condition, especially MS67 or better, examples have crossed auction blocks for $10,000 to $25,000. And in rare, nearly flawless specimens with strong luster and minimal marks, bidding has pushed into the $100,000 range. There have even been premium registry quality coins rumored to approach or exceed $650,000 in private transactions when condition and error strength align perfectly. But even without the extra leaf, high-grade Wisconsin quarters are no joke. Regular strikes in MS68 condition are extremely scarce. A flawless example with booming luster, no visible marks under magnification, and razor-sharp detail can command tens of thousands. One extraordinary top population coin reportedly sold for over $85,000 because it was the finest known at the time. So how do you identify a potentially valuable Wisconsin quarter? First, examine the corn closely under strong light or magnification. Look for an extra leaf shape either pointing upward or downward from the husk. Second, check the mint mark. Most valuable errors came from the Denver Mint. Third, inspect the surfaces. Heavy scratches, dull gray color, and flattened details reduce value. Bright luster, sharp edges, and minimal contact marks increase it dramatically. Finally, avoid cleaning the coin. Cleaning destroys collector value instantly. What makes this coin so valuable is not just the error. It is the combination of a popular state design, a widely publicized mint mistake, limited high-grade survivors, and intense collector demand. Older collectors remember when this error first made headlines in the mid-2000s. People searched through rolls, bank bags, and pocket change hoping to find one. That excitement still drives demand today. Looking again at this example, the surfaces show light wear but strong detail. If it does not have the extra leaf variety, its value in circulated condition may range from face value up to $5. In about uncirculated condition, perhaps $10 to $20. But if even a faint extra leaf is present and verified, the story changes completely. Suddenly, you could be holding something worth hundreds, thousands, or far more depending on grade. Moving on, this is why condition and tiny details matter more than most people realize. A coin that looks ordinary can hide a six-figure secret. A small die gouge can turn 25 cents into a retirement surprise. And for collectors between 50 and 75 years old who remember searching coin jars at the kitchen table, that possibility still brings excitement. Always check your state quarters carefully. Use good lighting. Use magnification. Compare with verified photos of the extra leaf varieties. And if you think you have something special, consider professional grading. One small detail on a Wisconsin quarter can mean the difference between spare change and a headline auction result. Next up, we're moving into presidential history with this George Washington presidential dollar, and at first glance it may look like just another golden dollar pulled from circulation. But take a closer look, because condition and small minting mistakes can turn an ordinary dollar into a life-changing discovery. The coin in these images shows clear circulation wear. The high points of Washington's hair and cheek are smooth and slightly flattened. The surface has a dull, muted gold tone instead of a bright satin shine. You can see light scratches and contact marks scattered across both sides. Along the rim, there are small nicks from years of handling. This is what collectors would call a well-circulated example, likely grading somewhere in the fine to very fine range based on visible wear but still strong lettering. Now here's where it gets interesting. Most presidential dollars from 2007 were struck in large numbers, and in normal circulated condition like this, they are usually worth just face value or a few dollars at most. But this series became famous for something that shocked the coin world: edge lettering errors. Some coins were released without the edge inscriptions that include the year, mint mark, and mottos. These became known as godless dollars when "In God We Trust" was missing. Others showed doubled edge lettering or misaligned inscriptions. If a coin like this one were discovered to have a completely missing edge inscription, even in circulated condition, values could jump from $1 to several hundred, sometimes over $1,000 depending on demand. In higher grades, especially uncirculated coins with strong luster and no wear, missing edge lettering errors have sold for several $1,000s. But the real shock comes with rare transitional errors or dramatic mint mistakes tied to early production runs. A pristine, uncirculated example with a bold missing edge inscription, certified by a top grading service, can reach into the tens of thousands. And in extremely rare cases involving unique minting anomalies or special presentation strikes, auction prices have climbed into the high six-figure range. Imagine finding what looks like pocket change and discovering it's worth $650,000 or more because of a rare production flaw. So how do you identify a potentially valuable presidential dollar? First, check the edge. Hold the coin sideways and slowly rotate it. You should see clear, evenly spaced lettering. If the edge is completely blank, that is your first red flag. If the lettering appears doubled, overlapping, or upside down relative to the obverse, that is another sign. Next, examine the surface under good light. Look for strong original luster with no dullness. Coins that never entered circulation with sharp details and minimal contact marks have the highest potential. Also pay attention to unusual color, off-metal strikes, or dramatic misalignments. While rare, these major mint errors are what push values into astonishing territory. A presidential dollar struck on the wrong planche or with severe off-center alignment could become a headline coin, especially if tied to the first year of issue like 2007. Now let's talk reality. The coin shown here based on visible wear and surface marks would likely remain in the low value range unless it carries a confirmed edge error. In circulated condition with normal edge lettering, it may be worth $1 to $3 to a collector filling an album. In uncirculated mint state grades like MS-65 and above, common examples can sell for $10 to $50. But the difference between common and rare in this series often comes down to that tiny strip of metal along the edge. That's the emotional part of coin collecting. Two coins can look almost identical on the front and back, yet one tiny detail can separate a $1 coin from a six-figure treasure. It's not about age alone. It's about rarity, condition, and mint mistakes that slipped past inspectors during high-speed production. Moving on in this series, remember this lesson. Always check the edge before you dismiss a presidential dollar. These coins were made in the hundreds of millions, but the rare errors were not. And sometimes the coin sitting quietly in a drawer or jar is the one that carries a story worth far more than its face value. That is the thrill of this hunt. A simple golden dollar, a small detail, and the possibility, however slim, that you are holding something extraordinary. Next up, take a close look at this presidential dollar, and do not let the soft golden color fool you. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary coin that has spent years in circulation. The surface shows clear wear. The high points of the portrait are slightly flattened. There are light scratches across the fields and small contact marks near the rim. The edges show minor nicks from handling. This is not a perfect mint state example. It is a circulated coin, likely in extremely fine to about uncirculated condition based on the remaining sharpness in the hair details and lettering. But here is where things get exciting. Even in this lightly worn condition, presidential dollars can surprise collectors in a way most people never expect. This series began in 2007 to honor former presidents of the United States in the order they served. Millions were made. Most are only worth face value. But a small number carry rare minting errors that can push their value into shocking territory. Look closely at the rim. Presidential dollars are known for edge lettering. If that edge lettering is missing, doubled, or inverted, the value can explode. A missing edge lettering error on certain early presidential dollars has sold for thousands. In top uncirculated grades with strong eye appeal, some have reached well into the five-figure range. Now imagine that same dramatic error on a low mintage issue in pristine condition. Auction records have climbed into the high six figures when rarity, condition, and demand all come together. Now focus again on this coin's condition. The portrait still shows strong outlines. The lettering is bold and readable. There is no heavy corrosion, no deep gouges. That tells us it has not been abused, just circulated. If this coin were graded today, it might fall into an AU range. In that state, a normal example may only bring a small premium. But if this exact coin carries a rare edge lettering error or a doubled inscription, its value could jump from $1 to $750,000 or more, depending on the severity and uniqueness of the mistake. That is the power of rarity. Moving on, let's talk about what makes these presidential dollars truly valuable. First, low mintages. Some later issues in the series were struck in much smaller numbers when public demand dropped. Fewer coins mean higher scarcity over time. Second, mint errors. Missing edge inscriptions, doubled lettering, partial strikes, and off-center errors are the big moneymakers. Third, condition. A coin that has never been cleaned, never polished, and retains original surfaces will always command more respect from serious collectors. Now imagine finding one of these in a roll from the bank. Many people ignored presidential dollars when they first came out. They were spent, tossed in drawers, or stored away without care. That means hidden treasures are still out there, especially examples with subtle edge errors that most people never thought to check. Take a breath and picture this: a simple golden dollar coin sitting in a jar for years. It looks average, maybe slightly worn like the one in front of us, but along the edge, a missing inscription. Or a doubled E pluribus unum. That small detail could turn a $1 coin into a life-changing discovery. The emotional impact is real. Collectors in their 50s, 60s, and 70s remember when new coin programs launched. Many saved them out of curiosity. Few inspected them closely. Today, grading services and online auctions have revealed just how powerful condition and error combinations can be. If this particular coin were found to have a dramatic edge error and graded in high mint state, similar pieces have crossed into $700,000 territory at major auctions when rarity and bidding wars collide. Even strong uncirculated examples without major errors can bring thousands if tied to low mintage years or special finishes. So here is what you should do. Check the edge carefully. Use a magnifying glass. Look for missing words, doubled letters, or misaligned inscriptions. Examine the surface for original luster. Avoid cleaning. Never polish. A cleaned coin can lose most of its value instantly, and that is what makes this coin so thrilling. It may look simple, it may look ordinary, but in the world of coin collecting, ordinary can hide extraordinary value. A small detail, a tiny mint mistake, a sharp grade. That is all it takes to move from pocket change to a six-figure treasure. Next time you see a presidential dollar, do not spend it without looking twice, because the difference between $1 and $750,000 might be hiding right along the edge. Next up, take a close look at this 1983 Kennedy half dollar, and don't let the dull gray surface fool you. At first glance, it looks like just another well-used coin from the early 1980s. But this is exactly the kind of piece that can surprise collectors in a big way. The moment you study the surface, you can see this coin has clearly lived a hard life. The high points are worn smooth. The cheek and jaw area show steady circulation wear. Fine details in the hair are faded and the fields have light scratches from years of handling. Around the rim, you can see minor nicks and contact marks, especially near the date. This is what most collectors would call a mid-grade circulated example, somewhere in the fine to very fine range based on what we see here. Now here's where it gets interesting. The year 1983 is special in the Kennedy half dollar series. That year, the U.S. Mint did not release uncirculated mint sets for collectors. That means high-grade examples had to be pulled directly from circulation. Because so many were used heavily, finding one in pristine condition today is far more difficult than many people realize. In circulated condition like this, a typical 1983 half dollar may sell for a few dollars, sometimes a bit more if it has strong eye appeal. But the story changes dramatically when condition improves. An uncirculated 1983 example with strong luster and sharp details can bring hundreds of dollars. And when you step into top certified grades, the numbers jump even higher. But condition is only part of the equation. Collectors also hunt for specific errors from 1983. Off-center strikes, clipped planches, and dramatic die cracks can push values into the thousands. A well-centered off-strike example from this year has sold for over $10,000 depending on severity and eye appeal. And if you ever find a strong double die on a Kennedy half from this period, the value can climb even more. Now imagine this. If a 1983 Kennedy half dollar were discovered in near-perfect mint state condition, graded at the very top of the scale, especially with a major striking error, experts estimate the value could soar past $80,000. That kind of price is reserved for coins with exceptional preservation and rarity, but it proves something important. Even a year that seems common at first glance can hide serious potential. Take a closer look at this specific coin. Despite the wear, the date is still clear. The mint mark area is readable. The rim remains mostly intact without major flattening. That tells us this coin, while circulated, avoided extreme abuse. It was spent but not destroyed. And that matters. Moving on, let's talk about what makes coins like this truly valuable. Rarity and high grade. Strong eye appeal. And most importantly, mistakes made during the minting process. Collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying scarcity and story. If you are checking your own Kennedy half dollars at home, focus on three things. First, examine the date and mint mark carefully under magnification. Second, look for doubling in the lettering and numbers. Third, inspect the edge and rim for any unusual cuts or distortions. Even a small irregularity can change everything. And here's something many people overlook. The 1983 half dollar was not widely saved by the public. By the early 1980s, half dollars were rarely used in daily transactions. Many were sent straight to storage or melted later. That makes certain varieties and error coins much tougher to find today than you might expect. Now picture this coin in your hand. It may look worn. It may not shine like silver. But hidden within this ordinary appearance is the possibility of a rare variety or overlooked error. That's why collectors never judge a coin too quickly. As we continue this journey through these coins, remember this simple truth. Condition is king. Rarity drives demand. And one small mint mistake can transform a 50-cent piece into something worth tens of thousands of dollars. So before you spend your next half dollar or toss it aside, take a second look. Because the difference between pocket change and a small fortune could be sitting quietly in plain sight. And trust me, the next coin in this series might shock you even more. Next up, Take a slow, careful look at this 1993 D. Kennedy half dollar because at first glance it feels ordinary. But sometimes the coins that look the most common carry the biggest surprises. Right away, you can see this piece has seen circulation. The surface shows light to moderate wear. The highest points are slightly flattened, especially along the cheek and jawline. Fine hair details are still visible, but they are not sharp. The field shows scattered hairline scratches from years of movement through pockets, drawers, and cash registers. Around the rim, there are small nicks and contact marks, but nothing severe. The date is bold and clear. The mint mark is visible and not damaged. Overall, this coin would likely fall in the about uncirculated range, possibly AU 50 to AU 55, based on the remaining detail and mild friction. Now, here is what makes 1993D interesting. The early 1990s were not known for rare half dollars in circulation. By this time, half dollars were rarely used in everyday transactions. Most were stored away in bank vaults or saved in rolls. That means heavily worn examples are actually less common than many collectors expect. At the same time, truly high-grade business strike coins from this year are surprisingly tough to find in flawless condition. In circulated grades like this, the average 1993 D. Kennedy half dollar might sell for face value or a few dollars to the right buyer. Nothing dramatic, nothing headline-grabbing. But condition changes everything. In certified mint state 65, values can jump into the hundreds. In MS 67, they move into the thousands. And when you reach the absolute top of the grading scale, where only a handful of coins survive with razor-sharp details and blazing original luster, auction results have climbed dramatically. A top population 1993 D graded at the highest certified level has been known to bring well over $20,000. But that is only part of the story. Collectors are also searching for dramatic mint errors from this period. Off-center strikes, broad strikes, double strikes, and strong die cracks can push prices into five figures. A major off-center Kennedy half dollar from the early 1990s with a full visible date can easily cross $15,000 depending on eye appeal. A rare wrong planche error where a half dollar is struck on a smaller coin blank can bring even more. Now imagine combining two factors. A near-perfect mint state 1993 D with a significant error, such as a bold double strike or a dramatic rotated die. That kind of coin is not something you find every day. Experts estimate that a unique or near-unique example with elite certification could break past $90,000 at a major auction. That is when a simple 50-cent piece transforms into a serious collector trophy. Looking back at this specific coin, even though it shows light wear, it has something important going for it. It has not been harshly cleaned. The surfaces, while marked, do not show deep gouges. The rim is complete. There are no obvious signs of damage from tools or chemicals. That matters. A coin that is original, even with wear, is always more desirable than one that has been polished or altered. Moving on, let's talk about how to identify potential value in your own 1993 half dollars. First, hold the coin under strong light and tilt it slowly. Look for unusual doubling in the lettering or numbers. Second, inspect the edge carefully. Kennedy halves have a reeded edge, and any missing reeds or unusual flattening could signal a striking issue. Third, examine the fields for raised lines or cracks that travel across the surface. Some die cracks can become bold and collectible. Also pay attention to overall sharpness. Even a small difference in preservation can mean thousands of dollars when it comes to modern coins. Many collectors underestimate coins from the 1980s and 1990s. They assume only older silver halves matter. But the truth is, condition rarity in modern issues can be just as powerful. Here's the emotional part of this story. In 1993, most people did not think twice about a Kennedy half dollar. It was just another coin. But decades later, as collectors search for the finest known examples, the supply at the top gets thinner and thinner. Every year, more coins get scratched, cleaned, or damaged. The number of true high-end survivors does not grow. it shrinks. That is why even a coin that looks simple today can carry enormous potential tomorrow. This 1993 D may not be a six-figure monster in its current state, but it represents something important. It shows how condition, preservation, and mint mistakes create opportunity. And it reminds us that the coins sitting quietly in drawers and old bankrolls might deserve a second look. So before you overlook a 1993 Kennedy $50, slow down. Check the surfaces. Study the details. Search for errors. Because hidden among the ordinary pieces could be a coin worth tens of thousands of dollars. And as we continue forward, the next coin in this lineup might prove once again that value often hides in plain sight.